My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and today we are celebrating Women's Health Month, and we have Mary Mellady here with us. Mary is with TMC. She is the Director of Connected Health and Wellness. She is also a registered dietitian, and she does fabulous talks for us. And today we're going to do a talk all about emotional eating. And I know that is definitely something that I think we've all struggled with at some point. So Mary's going to share some tips with us today. So welcome, Mary.
Hello. All right. Good morning. As Maya said, my name is Mary, and we are going to talk a little bit about emotional eating. And we all do this. We may not want to admit that we do this, but we all do this at some time. Thinking about if you've had a really stressful day and you're on your way home, you are more likely to stop and pick up salad, or you're more likely to stop and get some sort of comfort food at like McDonald's or Carl's Jr. or whatever your place is. And so that's emotional eating. We often use food to calm ourselves or to reward ourselves. And so part of it is just recognizing that that's what we do. All right. So why can't we just eat? Well, it's not that simple. Eating is more than just the food we ingest. There's many factors that influence what and how we eat. Think about, I had started using a tagline last year, the COVID 15, so we're mimicking that freshman 15. And now I hear it out there a lot. I'm sure they didn't get it from me, although I wish I had copyrighted that phrase. But COVID was a pretty stressful time. Last year was pretty stressful for us, and many of us turned to food, especially if we were home a lot and around a lot of food. And so it's not just about eating. It's not just about putting food in our mouths, but it's also about the what and the how and the why. So food is not just eating energy. It's an experience. I kind of want you guys to think about that for a minute, and think about that as we go through this, the what and the how of the eating. So what, how, where, and why? So eating involves what we eat. So the different food groups, the amounts of healthy food versus the unhealthy foods that we might choose. It's also about how we eat our food. Do we eat really fast? Do we eat really slow? Do we eat using utensils? Do we choose to use our hands because that's more of a culture thing? It's about where we have our meals and our snacks. Do you spend more time commuting in your car? Perhaps that's true if you live in a different area and you eat in your car a lot. Or do you have a specific place in your house? And we'll go into that a little bit more. And then it's also a lot about why we are eating. And that's where the emotions come into play. So what we eat. All right, so we all know what we should be eating, right? Every time we hear a lecture about healthy eating, or we go to a doctor, or we hear anything about eating healthy, they just say eat healthy. And we automatically should know what that means. And I will tell you from experience with different clients that I've had coming in to either change the way they're eating, learn more about healthy eating, or they're looking to lose weight. For the most part, most of them know what to eat. So I'm guessing that most people watching this are going to have a good idea of what we should be eating. So we need to be focused on a variety of colorful vegetables and fruit. We want to make that plate really pretty, really colorful. Think about a color wheel or a palette, a painter's palette. We want to use a variety of fruits and vegetables when we are eating our meals and our snacks. Choosing whole grains. If you've heard any one of my talks, you know I'm very passionate about that grains are not evil. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. It's the type of carbohydrates that we're choosing. And so whole grains are healthy for us. They provide us with energy. They provide us with many nutrients, B vitamins, that we wouldn't otherwise get naturally in our diet without those whole grains. So when I say whole grains, I'm thinking of brown rice, whole grain pasta, whole grain breads, corn tortillas over the flour processed tortillas. So think whole grains. Lean sources of protein, whether that be from animal sources or from plant sources. We're looking for lean sources. Things like poultry, like the chicken and the fish chicken and turkey, without the skin on it, the white meats versus the dark meats. If you're choosing beef, a leaner cut of beef or a lean blend of ground beef, or even those plant sources of protein. Are you choosing a lot of processed plant protein sources that have a lot of extra fats added to them? We want to avoid those. Low-fat dairy. We do need dairy. There is a lot of hype out there about whole-fat dairy being so healthy for us. All of the research still at this point in time still tells us that whole-fat dairy is saturated fats, and that contributes to the increased cholesterol in our blood and the plaques in our arteries and veins that cause that cardiac disease and stroke. So please still stick with the low fat, the 2%, the 1%, or non-fat dairy. And that goes for milk, that goes for yogurts. And if you're choosing cheeses, try to choose a harder, drier cheese that's lower in that fat. And again, we want healthy fats, those unsaturated fats that are liquid at room temperature. And that's at a normal room temperature, not at an Arizona room temperature. So if you think about coconut fat that's touted as being a healthy fat, that is solid at room temperature. It looks very much like Crisco. It is more saturated than even butter is. Butter even stays fairly solid at room temperature versus if you're looking at a bottle of olive oil or canola oil that is liquid at room temperature, or even if you use like a spread that is mostly olive oil based, you'll notice that liquefies pretty fast. Those are the kinds of healthy fats we're looking for. And also included in that are fats from the nuts and nut butters, as well as avocados. And of course, we all know what we should be eating less of: the sugars, the processed foods, and those solid fats. And I found this quote and I love it. And I don't know who really said it, but it's pretty funny. So we all know we are what we eat. So don't be fast, cheap, easy, or fake. Isn't that funny? Hope that's not offensive to anybody. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be funny. So if you know that you eat a lot of sugar, I know I eat too much sugar. And I try to give up sugar for a while and I feel so much better. And then I go back to it. So it's a constant battle no matter who you are. So avoiding all the extra sugars in our diets, avoiding those processed foods. How much food? Think about how much food that you eat daily that comes out of a box, a package, or that's otherwise frozen, and you just heat it in the microwave. Think through that. How often are you opening packages versus taking something from its original form? And then those solid fats, like we talked about, the coconut oils, the butters, the high whole fat dairies, and those fatty animal proteins. So we want to avoid those. All right. So how do we eat? This all goes into this emotional eating, is how we eat. Do we eat mindlessly? Do you eat while you're multitasking? There was literally a day I ate a package of crackers because I was working on a presentation, just kidding, not this one, but something, and I didn't even realize I ate the whole sleeve of crackers. And I actually asked somebody next to me, did you eat my crackers? I was so distracted and I was eating so mindlessly that I didn't know that I had even finished these crackers. So do you eat while you're multitasking? Are you distracted while you're eating? Do you eat while you're driving? Do you eat on the run? Do you just grab something while you're doing other things because you have so much to do? And eating isn't given its own time. So, or do you eat quickly? Do you eat your meals in less than 20 minutes? We recommend that you eat a meal and it should last longer than 20 minutes. That means that you're taking a bite, you're chewing, you're enjoying that food. You're setting your utensil down if you're using, a fork or a spoon or something like that. Are snacks planned, or are they just are you grazing? Are you just grabbing something because you don't think you have time to eat, or because I might not eat now, or I might not have time later, or I'm a little bit hungry, or I'm famished and I need something. So is how we eat plays into our emotional eating, because it becomes this thing that we feel like we have to do while we're on top of everything else, and it's not given its own priority. And we need to give it some priority, because food gives us the energy to do what we want to do. Where we eat also plays into our emotional state and into how we're eating and what we're eating. Environmental factors can influence our eating habits. So visual stimuli, the noise level, the smells. If you have so much going on around you, that can lead to distracted eating. It can lead to that mindless eating. It can lead high noise levels if you're not used to that. If you're eating in this very chaotic environment and that's not what you're used to, and that is causing you a level of stress, that may impact your choices of what kinds of foods, of the what part of eating you're making. Smells. If have you ever walked into some place and you felt, I'm not really very hungry, and then you walk in and it smells wonderful, and all of a sudden you're famished. So what other smells, and this is very individualistic, what other smells influence how you eat? Do you ever have times where something doesn't quite smell right and you're just, you don't feel like eating what's in front of you? Or is there enough smells going on in and around your environment that it's encouraging you to eat more? It's here's the classic sign is the popcorn in the office. How many people have office mates or other people around that then go and pop popcorn, and then you're thinking, oh, that smells really good. I must need a snack because that smells so good. So think about, what are your environment? Where are you eating? And what's going on around you? And how is your head in the best space to enjoy that meal? What does that look like? Is it when you're with a lot of people and there's a lot of conversation and it's really noisy and it's a little chaotic, and you thrive on that because maybe you're more of an extroverted person and you get your energy from all of those people around you, and that visual stimuli of a lot going on? Or do you need it to be a little quieter, a little calmer, so that you can really focus on what's in front of you, because you get your energy maybe from just some calm time? So you need to kind of think through that. A lot of the next part that we're going into, why we're eating, comes with understanding who you are and what motivates you, what influences you in your responses to stress and other external stimuli. And this has always been one of my favorite quotes, because this is very much me. A crust eaten in peace, and I typoed that, sorry. A crust eaten in peace is better than a banquet partaken in anxiety. So think about that for a minute. If you're somebody that really needs that kind of quiet and calm environment, if all you have is something very small and you really eat that mindfully and you're really enjoying that, that's probably a lot better than if you were given a whole smorgasbord of all these wonderful foods in this very chaotic and busy environment. Think about a cruise ship. That would be my antithesis of what would be enjoyable for me versus eating somewhere in a quiet little patio by myself. So where you eat does influence your emotional state and what you choose to eat. So think about that. Where are you currently eating? Do you eat in front of the TV? That would be how you're eating, very distracted. That would also be in an environment, in a room that really may not be set up for eating a meal. So thinking through where you eat. Now, why do we eat? What purpose does food serve in your life? I want you to think about that. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, I want you to take that question with you, and I want you to be able to answer that at some point. And again, this really comes down to knowing who you are. For many of us, it's a physiological need. We're hungry, we eat, we need the energy to go do something. For some of us, it's cultural, or values, or our preferences based on our cultures. many cultures have very particular things around food. And that could be, from a religious perspective, from just the part of the world you're from. So all of those things play into why we eat and why we choose the foods we do. Social. How often do we have gatherings? Well, not so much in the past year, but we're getting back to it. But it was always around food. When people come into town, we have celebrations that involve food. 4th of July is always a barbecue. And, it's all about, what do you serve for this holiday? You go on vacation. I want to eat here, here, and here because I haven't eaten there in a while. So food is very much a part of our social practices. And then we also eat because of emotions. Let's just face it, Ben and Jerry, they pop up a lot in our lives because we might be stressed, we might be sad, we might be angry. And so I think Ben and Jerry should probably capitalize on that a little bit more. No, they shouldn't. I don't want them to. But we do use those comfort foods, and that's why they're called comfort foods, because they soothe us. So what purpose does food serve in your life? So thinking about that. All right, so as I mentioned, why we eat equates to, in many cases, what we eat and the amount we eat. So these are all kind of phrases that should be pretty common to most of us, those comfort foods. I've had so many people come in and say, yeah, this is what I make when I'm upset. This is my comfort food. So that might be something from macaroni and cheese to mashed potatoes, or to the other side, like I mentioned, Ben and Jerry's, or, brownies or something on the sweet side. What spectrum are you on? But these are all things that there's a common thread there. That was all on that list of what we should probably be limiting: the sugars, the processed foods, the salts, and the solid fats. But that seems to provide us with comfort. Feeding our feelings. How often have we heard that we stuff our feelings? Primarily Women's Health Month. That we're stressed, we have anxiety, or we might be angry, or we're sad. And so rather than dealing with those emotions that are typically uncomfortable for us, we're going to feed them. We're going to eat something. We're going to drink some soda. We might drink a really foofy coffee, and that's going to make us feel better. Or we might have had a really great day and we're really proud of ourselves that we did something. So I get to go to Dairy Queen because I deserve it. Or, I just had a really rough meeting, so I deserve to go get French fries, something like that. So we're feeding our feelings, or we're rewarding those feelings. Skipping meals. We might do this because we're too busy, or we might do this also just intentionally, that we're trying to curb our eating, the amount that we're eating. And now this is unrelated to if we are doing any kind of a fast, or if we're doing kind of a specific meal plan where we're intentionally not eating for certain hours of the day, or if it's related to cultural things. And then binging on foods. How often does that happen? And this might be intentionally or unintentionally. Like I said with the crackers, that was completely unintentionally. I would normally not eat that many crackers because crackers really aren't that good. But how often does that happen, that you end up binging on something? The other good example is popcorn in the movie theater. How often do you sit down with popcorn? That's not great popcorn sometimes, but we end up eating a lot of it because it's that mindless thing. Or we could be very intentional about that. I'm going to eat this whole pint of Ben & Jerry's because I've had a really bad day. So understanding that why we're eating really can impact what we're eating and the amount of what we're eating. So is the food you are eating serving you well? That goes back, and that ties to that, what place does food serve in your life? All right. Is it serving you well? Food is for us to use as we need to use it, for our bodies to give us energy to do what we want to do. Food doesn't control us, but it shouldn't, but in many cases it does. So this is the second thing I want you to take away. Is the food you're eating serving you well? And this is where we really get to the emotional eating. Is that food that you're eating, I always ask people, how do you feel after you've eaten that hamburger or pint of ice cream? And every single time they'll be like, it was great. I felt great. So you have to think about, is the food you're eating, how is it serving you an hour after you've eaten it? Because that's when our brain starts to kick in. And guaranteed, we all have these regrets, okay? We all have these points where we think, ugh, I shouldn't have eaten that. I shouldn't have eaten so much of that. Ugh, why did I do that? I'm a terrible person because I just ate that whole bag of chips. And so that's when you have to start thinking about, is what you're eating serving you well? Okay, because that's where the emotion ties in. We get those emotions beforehand. We want to comfort ourselves. We want to get rid of those feelings. So we feed ourselves. We feed ourselves with things that aren't of the healthiest nature. I can guarantee that if we ever had a binge and we chose, instead of comfort foods, we chose carrots or celery or broccoli or green beans, I doubt that we would have that feeling of, ugh, I shouldn't have eaten that whole bowl of carrots or whole bowl of green beans, because that's never the food we choose for comfort foods. So is that food we're eating serving us well? So in order to combat that, we have this emotion, it's uncomfortable. The next item is we eat something. In between there's a trigger, or before that emotion, there's a trigger. We have this emotion, then we have this reaction that equates to this emotional eating. We need to understand what our personal triggers are. Is it that we're getting stressed? Do we have an anxiety around public speaking? I'm going to go eat ice cream right after this. Just joking. I'm not. Do we understand? Do you, again, like I started this talk off, emotional eating, in order to eliminate or to reduce how often we use food to comfort ourselves, we need to understand ourselves. Do we have more emotions? Are emotions a little bit higher? For most people, they are when we're tired. So maybe know ahead of time, if you've had not a great night's sleep, you haven't gotten a lot of sleep, have more of a plan. That's point 2 around what you're eating that day. Because chances are, if you're tired, we're going to be a lot more emotional about things. And so we need to have a plan in place, because if we just leave it to our brain to figure out what we're eating on a day when we're really tired, we're really emotional, we're likely not to make good choices. So thinking about your personal triggers. Is it certain people? Is it certain situations? Is it environmental? When I walk into this room, this really stimulates me, and I don't feel as confident or around X people or this noise level. What are those triggers? Journaling is a great way to figure out your triggers. A food journal of writing down what you're eating, when you're eating, and how you're feeling and what the situation is can really lead you to understand why it is that you're making food choices that you know you probably wouldn't otherwise have made if you were totally using a logical brain. So, and those food journals can be shared with somebody that you trust, or it can be kept only for yourself. Having a plan, and we're going to go through each one of these a little bit. Before you eat, you should halt, eating mindfully, and then eating with a purpose. All right. So emotional triggers, again, introspection can help to identify triggers and the root causes of our emotional eating. Think about asking yourself why, and ask yourself again, why, and why, and why, and why. So a scenario that I often use is I will have a pre-meal when I get home while I'm cooking dinner. So I have 2 dinners. I'm like a hobbit. I have dinner 1 and dinner 2. And I don't think that's really what it's called. It's probably supper and dinner, whatever. So I eat a whole bunch while I'm cooking dinner, and then I eat dinner. And why do I do that? Well, because I didn't eat lunch. Well, why didn't I eat lunch? Notice that was at least 2 whys there. Why didn't I eat lunch? I didn't eat lunch because I was too busy. Why was I busy? Number 3, I was so busy because I got to work late. Why was I into work late? Number 4, why? Because I overslept because I was so tired the night before. 5th why? Why were you so tired? Well, because I didn't go to bed until really late. Why didn't I go to bed to really late? 6th why? I could keep doing this. So you really can't just say it's because I was hungry when I got home. Really dig into why that is. Why are you doing what are you doing? Why did you choose when you got home from work to sit and eat the container of ice cream rather than preparing a healthy meal? Well, because I was hungry. Is that really why? Is it because you had a stressful day? Is it because you're feeling sad? Are you feeling anxious? Are you tired? When I was in college, I used to eat snack a lot while I was staying up all night studying. Hence the freshman 15. But did we experience that over the past year through this whole COVID? We were just kind of tired. We were burnt out. We had a high level of anxiety and stress. So that caused a lot of emotional eating. But we really need to kind of dig down in order for us to figure out what our triggers are. And like I said, doing a journal is very helpful to understand that, or talking through with somebody. Having a plan. All right, don't keep trigger or comfort foods in the house. Don't do it. If you are a chip fiend, don't keep chips in the house. If that's a trigger food, don't keep them there. If you really are having a bad day and you need chips, then make yourself go out and buy it. I used to have a client, and he had a brilliant plan that he loved cheesecake, but he would never buy cheesecake. But I am still a big believer in everything in moderation. So his way to control himself and create that sense of moderation was he would only have cheesecake if he was out at a certain restaurant, which only happened once a quarter or, every couple months, something like that. So he got cheesecake that he split with his wife whenever they went to this particular restaurant. And that was his treat, and he felt good about that. And he felt like he wasn't depriving himself, but he also didn't keep it around the house. And the other option is, like I said, if you really need something, buy a single serving. If you really need chips, then buy a little bag. Costs more, but you know what? Maybe that'll teach you that there's other options than these chips to make you have to figure out how to deal with some of those emotions that we are using food to fix right now. So single servings is a great thing too. Stop using drive-throughs. I know there is a time and a place for drive-throughs. I'm not sure exactly what they are. Long trips, perhaps. But if you're using drive-throughs, and actually right now I know a lot of people still are using drive-throughs because there is that comfort about eating in a restaurant, or we're using Uber Eats or something like that. I guess what I want to say about drive-throughs is stop using drive-throughs and then eating in your car, okay? We talk to teenagers a lot about distracted driving, and we hear don't text and drive. Okay, well, we don't want you to eat and drive either because that's distracting as well. And so you're not driving well and you're not eating well in either situation. So you're combining two things that really should require some focus. So if you go through a drive-through and pick up food, go someplace, sit down and enjoy your food. All right. Create a list of healthy alternatives when you're confronted with triggers. Okay, so I've had a really stressful day, and normally my go-to would be tortilla chips, but what's going to be my option? Well, maybe I bake some corn tortillas, and that's my healthy go-to, is that I'm baking them myself at home and I'm making my own corn chips. Or if it's a sweet thing, then maybe it is grapes, or maybe it's some diced up fruit, or maybe it is carrots that are sweet. So thinking about what would be an okay comfort food that's a healthier choice than what we would traditionally use. And then also connect with others to create that social support. We know that people who have a social support with people that they really trust and they feel comfortable with sharing, I'm having a rough day today and I really want to sit and eat this ice cream. I really want to sit and snack on these chips, or I really want to have something else that you can talk through that with. And maybe they have a plan that we, go for a walk or, just talking on the phone. So think about having those people that you can talk with and that you're able to be completely honest with. This would be somebody that you might be able to share your journal with and have them help you figure out, what are these triggers and why am I doing this? All right, here's my kind of off the wall plans. If you feel like you're going to start to eat something you shouldn't eat, go brush your teeth. Because in many cases, we eat because there's a taste on our palate that isn't quite what we want there. And so we're looking for something else. How many of you have said, all right, I need something else because I'm just not quite done? Does anybody else do that? It's because we need to cleanse our palate. That's why we cleanse our palate between wine tasting, or you have a cracker or you smell something. You're changing that flavor profile of what you're smelling and what you're tasting. So go brush your teeth. And apparently don't use a lot of toothpicks, because I told my dentist that I recommend this, and they said, well, don't use too much toothpaste. So a little drop of toothpaste. Chew some sugar-free gum. Again, we're trying to change that taste in our palate so that we don't feel like we're searching for something. Drink some water. In many cases, when we think we're hungry, we're really just thirsty, and we can never, especially in Arizona, most of us don't drink enough water. Just plain straight up water. Clean the bathroom. Why would I say this? How does this have anything to do with emotional eating? Okay, so it doesn't have to be a bathroom, and it doesn't even have to be cleaning. I just put clean the bathroom because I totally hate cleaning bathrooms. And so I would be grumpy about cleaning the bathroom, and that would totally change my thought process of being worried about what I needed to eat. So maybe, and it's actually pretty satisfying that you've finished and you've cleaned something. So figure out something. What is very satisfying that takes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that you can do instead of eating, that then afterwards you feel kind of better about yourself rather than worse about yourself. Because the problem with emotional eating, as we eat based on how we feel emotionally, not physiologically, and after the fact, we feel worse emotionally in most cases because we feel bad about ourselves for having eaten the food that we've eaten. And then finally, you can also take a break and change your surroundings. Because as I mentioned, where we are, that environmental stimulus may be affecting our emotions and challenging ourselves about what we're going to choose to eat. So change your surroundings. Walk out, go get the mail. Go water some plants. Go take the dog for a quick walk. Something. Just take a break from where you are and see if that helps. All right, before you eat, I want you to halt. HALT stands for, am I hungry? That is about the only reason on this list that you should be eating. Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I thirsty? As I mentioned before, oftentimes we're just thirsty. Or am I tired? I talked earlier about being tired can make us over emotional, or we're just looking to keep ourselves awake, and we know eating kind of stimulates us a little bit, so that gives us a little more energy, as it should, because it's food, and that wakes us up a little bit. But it's still not a great reason to eat. Take a 5-10 minute power nap if you're tired. If you're thirsty, drink some water. Again, we rarely drink enough water. If you're lonely or if you're angry, the lonely goes to being sad, being depressed. That's when you need that social support. That's when you need to be able to text somebody, call somebody, do something, FaceTime with somebody, so that you can have that emotional connection with a person, not with food. All right. So remember to halt. On a hunger scale, here's where we want to eat between this 3 and the 8. If we let ourselves get so hungry, and we've all done this, I know we all have. If you let yourself get so hungry, if you're down in this ravenous, I'm going to eat my fist kind of hunger, we're never going to make good food choices at that point. Even if we're eating healthy foods, we're going to eat more than we probably would have if we ate something when we were in this 3 to 4 range. And we should also stop eating when we're satisfied, around the 8. 10 is when we're like Bart Simpson, not Bart, it's the other Simpson, Homer. And he's sitting there with like his pants unbuttoned because he's so full. This is like Thanksgiving stuffed. You're just so full you can't even move off the couch and you have to unbutton a button. We don't want to get there either. That's when we start to feel bad about ourselves that we've eaten so much, that we're so overfull. And that's when our emotions start to trigger, oh, why did I do that? I am not a good person. I just ate way too much. So either end of that scale is not a good place to be. We don't want to be, I'm going to eat my fist, and we don't want to be, I'm so stuffed I can't move. So we want to keep this right between this, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're satisfied. How do we get there? Because as kids, we're generally trained, we got to clean our plate. If you were in person, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you're part of the Clean Plate Club. But think about it. How many times were we told, or if you're a parent, how many times did you tell your kid, finish your plate? You have to finish everything on your plate. And so we train that sense of knowing when we're full out of our kids. We were probably trained, it was trained out of us. So we have to relearn to understand when we're actually hungry, when we're full. And so that takes eating slowly, because it takes a little time for our stomachs to let our brains know that, okay, I'm satisfied. So that's why we want you to take that 20 minutes to eat your meals and, 10 minutes or so to eat your snacks. So think about that. You should be eating every 3 or 4 hours, unless you're on some sort of intermittent fasting diet that you've talked with your doctor or talked with a dietitian about through the day when you're awake, because we want to keep you right in that scale of 3 to 8. And it doesn't have to be huge. It can be small. You hear that small frequent meals, that works for people. This is why, because we never get so hungry or so stuffed. All right. All right. Eating mindfully. We eat with all of our senses. We really do. I know your eyes don't, or your stomach doesn't have eyes, but when a plate looks beautiful, we're more apt to eat it versus when something's just slopped on there and it looks really gross. You're like, yeah, I don't think I want to eat that. So looking at your food, enjoy what you're eating with your eyes. Is it pretty to look at? We often see all these pictures on social media of all these beautiful plates. And that's people that are really enjoying the look of their food. And we all should do that too. Smell the different aromas of food. Don't just shovel in the food into your mouth. See if you can actually taste or smell the different things, the different aromas on the plate. Can you smell any different spices? Or does it just all smell the same because it's going right from the plate into our mouth? Take some time to enjoy the smells. Listen to your food. Snap, crackle, pop. Do y'all remember that from the Rice Krispie Kids? The snap, crackle, and pop. Food does make a noise. Do we know that? No, probably not, because we're not doing anything about using all of our senses when we eat for the most part. Is that salad you're eating really crunchy? When you bite into an apple, it's crunchy and then it's kind of soft. So think about, what are you hearing when you're eating? Feel the different textures in your mouth and savor all those different flavors as well. So really think about that word savor. When you're eating, savor that food. That means that you enjoy it with all of your senses. So see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, and feel it in your mouth. All right. And this might be hard. The listen part might be hard for people. I know some people don't like to hear the sound of chewing. So that might be something you skip that bothers you. And if we're texture people, sometimes that can bother us. But understanding those different things can also help how we're eating. So eat mindfully. Be present for your food. Don't be eating in front of the TV or while you're eating, while you're reading, or while you're playing a game, or while you're driving, or while you're working. While you eat, eat. And that's all you should be doing, besides maybe having a conversation with those people around you. And then lastly, purposeful eating. I love this phrase even more than mindful eating. This goes back to, is the food you are eating serving you well? Does this food you eat make you feel good physically and emotionally? And it goes back to that, when I would ask people, how'd you feel after you had that cheeseburger? I felt great. But then later on, I felt really bad for having eaten that. And it didn't sit so well in my stomach. So you have to think about beyond that instant gratification of food. How are you going to feel later? So guilt is not a recognized food group. It's not part of our plate. It's not part of the pyramid. wasn't one of the 5 food groups. Guilt is not part of eating. We have to take that out. You have to own your choices and enjoy the food that you've chosen to eat. Okay? Everything in moderation except for regret. So if you really want some Ben & Jerry's, great. Make it a flavor you love. Put it in a beautiful dish and enjoy it in a really beautiful environment. And savor every bite. See the colors. There's so many colors that you could find in there. Look at the chunks. Taste it. Figure out all the different flavors. Own that choice that you've made to have eaten that bowl of ice cream and enjoy it. Don't just be eating it because you're sad. Okay? Everything in moderation can fit into our diets. All of those foods we love can fit into our daily diet, but it has to be our choice. We have to have control over what we're eating. The food can't be controlling us. Once we flip that paradigm where we now are eating because it's what we want to be eating, it's what we want to be doing, because we know we've made that choice and it will either satisfy us physically, it satisfies the taste that we're looking for, but we are not regretting what we've eaten. That's when we beat this battle of emotional eating. I'm not going to say it never happens, but at least we have a little bit more control over it. So eating with purpose, making conscious decisions about what you're putting in your mouth and knowing how it's going to affect you physically and emotionally is where you start. Owning those decisions. And then from there, you can start to change it because now you're in control. I own what I've chosen, and now I am going to move on. Don't sit and think about it all afternoon. Oh, I shouldn't have had that. I shouldn't have had that. Because you know what? You already ate it. It's over. It's gone. Don't do it again. Next time, eat a smaller amount or make a different decision. Okay? So eating with purpose. Is the food you are eating serving you well? Okay, so our relationship with food. Food provides us with energy to do the things we want to do. Think about that. Food is also to be enjoyed and savored. It's not just to be shoveled in our mouth. It's not our enemy. It's not just to be eaten because we're sad, because we're angry, because we've had a really bad day. It's not a reward. It gives us energy, and it should give us pleasure. Changing our relationship with food can change more than our weight. So we have control over food. Food should not have control over us. Is the food you're eating serving you well? And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was great. I just had one question. I did have somebody say that they use individual bags, like baggies, to sort of portion out their snacks as a tool that they've been using so that they don't sort of maybe overeat on a particular food item.
That is perfect. And they actually sell like portion size containers too. So if you buy a big bulk of something, you can portion cup them up. And I know there's things that you can buy on Amazon or maybe even at Costco that they're even color coded. So, okay, this is my produce, this is my protein, this is my carb, and you can prepackage it all up. Yep.
Oh, that's a great idea. And then the only other question that I had was just about eating meals. Should you be eating those at the same time every day? Is a consistency something that would be important? Was one of the questions.
That can be helpful for somebody who's struggling with getting a consistent eating habit, that are relying on their emotions to tell them when they should eat. So having a specific time when you eat that's pre-planned, and this is what I'm going to eat, and this is where I'm going to eat it, that can help you take that control back.
Great. Okay. And Mary, we'll be able to share your presentation afterwards with anyone who registered. If by chance you are watching this later, feel free to give us a call in the office. The phone number is 520-324-1960, and we'd be happy to email that to you as well. Thank you so much for being here, Mary. Next week, I did want to just share with everyone, we do have our Whip It Up Cooking Club, and we're going to be focusing on avocados with Chef Carlotta Flores from Cicharo Concepts. So I'm really excited that we're going to be able to be with her in her kitchen making some recipes with avocados next week. So
That sounds fun.
yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Have a good